The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network.
Hello and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I am your host, Peter Martin, Vice President of Business Development at Cref. Cref has offices in Boston, Fort Lauderdale, and Dallas, Texas. I am happy to be joined today by Dennis Ford. Dennis, Corporate Facilities Management, Atrium Health, headquartered out of, where are you guys headquartered out of now? Still in Charlotte, Dennis?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte. I couldn't say that. Charlotte, North. It's a Friday. Dennis and I are taping on a Friday morning. Maybe that's what the problem is. But Dennis, thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for having me, Pete.
My pleasure. So Dennis is, in addition to his corporate facilities management role with Atrium, Dennis is also running for the ASHE Presidency for the term beginning in 2025. Dennis, welcome. I appreciate you making time. As we've said, folks may have seen it. Your colleagues, Allison and Danielle, have appeared. You have appeared. So I'm really happy, to have you join us. And I guess as we tape this on August 2nd, we are back from the ASHE Innovation Conference. I still want to go to the ASHE. I still want to call it the ASHE Annual Conference. It's just kind of like inbred, right? But back from the Innovation Conference last week, held in Anaheim. What were your thoughts on the conference, Dennis? Did you enjoy it? It was a blur for many, but tell us a little bit about the Innovation Conference as opposed to the annual conference.
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. It is a little bit of a blur being on the ASHE board. They have quite the schedule for us, and I also gave 2 presentations while I was there, and of course a speech for ASHE President-elect. So I was pretty busy. But I love the rebranding. It's the rebranding of ASHE as a whole. We're kicking it off with the Health Facilities Innovation Conference, and I'm hoping that we can ride that momentum forward as we dive a little deeper into our strategic planning and really, part of my platform or what I've been preaching or teaching lately is the need for us to do less with less. You hear a lot about do more with less, but I don't think we can stretch ourselves there. So we have to be smarter in what we do. We have to be looking at things that maybe we don't need to do anymore. We can be a little bit more lean in how we approach things, and obviously in order to do that, we need to embrace technology and innovation. So I think it's a wonderful platform, and I'm excited about where we're going to go from here.
Yes, and you talked about, you just said less with less, and I was at, you said that you did 2 sessions there. I was at your first session, and it is a blur because you were with, who did you present? It was
Terry Scott was my first session.
Terry Scott,
yes,
managing multiple facilities, which was well attended. Because I have to imagine doing less with less has to apply in some way to managing multiple facilities and multiple facility staffs. Do you see that as a theme, not only within your organization, but across the country organizationally?
Oh, absolutely. That's really one of the main objectives with mergers, and Atrium. I've been here a little over 6 years, and we've gone through multiple mergers in that time. I mean, when I first got here, we had 18 hospitals in the Charlotte area, and now we're up to 67 hospitals in multiple states. But part of it is when you merge, you get a little bit more lean. You're doing the same amount of work. Really, you're doing more work, right? Because you're taking on more facilities, but you're doing it with less people. So you're not going to have a director of corporate support for each hospital system. You're only going to have one. And so we have to be smarter in how we do our jobs in order to meet the needs of all of our facilities.
Yeah, when you say do less with less, how is that message received to the folks you're speaking with?
It takes a while to grasp, but we are getting the word out. Josh Brackett's been preaching it too. He picked up on it, and you see him at many of the conferences speaking as well. So more of us are embracing it, but again, it really does coincide with technology and innovation. And when you look at it that way, I dive really deep into computer-aided maintenance management systems, CMMS. And when you look at maybe a graphical piece or element of your CMMS that might show you locations of where work is needed. So you can log on and say, hey, where are my work orders located today? Where am I working today? And you can start to map out where you're going. You can look at all the tools and materials you're going to need so that you can hit all those areas. And then you might pick up a few, say, hey, wow, while I'm in that area, I probably should pick up these in that area. So it's just being a little bit more smart, and therefore you're a little bit more lean. So you're not coming back to the office to look at a work order. You're not coming back to the office to pick up more supplies, and you're not walking by work needed while you're out in the facility. That's just one example of doing less with less, and it's not huge, right? But the little nuggets here and there will definitely add up over time.
I have to imagine, and then I'd like to ask you if you could kind of talk a little bit about your career path and what led you here. But just going on the CMMS systems, work order management, I got to imagine, going from 18 to 67 in 6 years, you must have multiple work order management systems out there in all your hospitals, and I have to imagine that's a challenge as you look to corporatize things. Yes or no, or what are you finding?
Yeah.
Cref provides strategic real estate solutions that enable organizations to get the most out of their physical infrastructure. At Cref, the difference is we're not just advisors, we're operators. Our expertise in strategic asset advisory, project management, regulatory preparedness, and finding operational efficiencies allows us to provide organizations with end-to-end visibility and insight into their real estate portfolios and physical assets. Please visit us at www.cref.com.
Yeah, so typically, Pete, that's exactly what you do find. However, with Atrium, we had standardized on a CMMS, and one of our first acquisitions was Wake Forest, and it just so happened that they were also on the same CMMS platform, which was very helpful. However, there's standardization within your CMMS, which is really the standardization of your maintenance program, right? So what are your maintenance strategies? What are your procedures that you attach to assets? What is the nomenclature of your assets, your inventory? So there was definitely a getting together and going over and reviewing that and standardizing on that. And then with the the 18 hospitals we have and the 4 or 5 or 6 hospitals or 7 that they have, and then when we picked up a couple other systems in Georgia, and it turned out that they were like, hey, we're not too happy with our CMMS, right? Maybe we should move on. So we brought them on. So all Atrium sites, which is 40 hospitals, are on one platform. And then when we merged with Advocate Aurora, they had just gotten on a platform. So right now we've only got 2 CMMS platforms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very good. So Dennis, a little bit about your background. You're, both Danielle and Allison kind of talked a little bit about their career paths. I know you have an interesting career path. Tell us a bit about how you arrived at this position with Atrium.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just getting into healthcare facilities in general is quite the story for most. My father was a career Air Force, and when I was 13 years old, I decided I also wanted to be a career Air Force, and I graduated high school in Little Rock, near Little Rock, Arkansas. Got an Air Force ROTC scholarship and started school or college in Texas. Graduated University of Texas San Antonio with a degree in civil engineering. I was heavily involved in Air Force ROTC and was afforded the opportunity to participate in a shadow program. And the first summer shadow program I did, I shadowed a contracting officer. And so I went back the next year and said, hey, I'd like to shadow a civil engineering officer. And I got to shadow one in San Antonio, Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. And I have to tell you, Pete, when looking at what the contracting officer was doing and the civil engineering officer was doing, I didn't find their careers overly exciting. However,
I was going to ask you, Dennis, about the contracting piece, but then I thought to myself, that little thing in my head went off and said, I don't want to put you in that position. But to comment on, we need everybody, right? But that does seem like it wouldn't be most glamorous role, I guess, for lack of a better way.
No, but it's definitely necessary. So it was
Yeah.
smart for them to start me there because being in civil engineering in the Air Force, you're basically a city manager. You're responsible for all properties on the base, all buildings, all roads, all utilities, everything. So yeah, you need contracting for sure.
Yes.
But the civil engineering officer at Lackland Air Force Base had projects at Wilford Hall Medical Center there in San Antonio. And he took me over there to introduce me to their program. And it was very interesting because a gentleman named Ken Ivory was an Air Force civil engineering officer, and he was running facilities, design construction at Wilford Hall. And I got very excited about what he was doing and all the programs that they had going on. You hear about, life safety and medical
Yeah.
gases and life and death, and it was very exciting. And then Ken Ivory tells me, he says, well, I'm transferring into the Medical Service Corps, which is hospital administration. And Pete, my father was in hospital administration. He was in the Medical
Wow.
Service Corps. So I
Wow.
called him up and I said, hey, Dad, I met this gentleman who's running facilities in a hospital, and he tells me that he's going to be in the Medical Service Corps. So my dad did some digging, and he found out that they were looking for engineers to run facilities engineering, to include biomedical or clinical engineering. And so I ended up entering the Medical Service Corps with Ken Ivory.
Nice.
Started my career in the Air Force, spent 6 years in the Air Force, then 7 years as a contractor supporting military healthcare facilities. Then I spent 10 years in Texas working on various different medical facilities or systems, to include Texas Children's in Houston. And now I've been with Atrium Health for just over 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah. How does so from a civil engineering background, how was the transition into the medical facilities world?
So engineering in general is a little bit of an analytical thought process, very risk adverse. And I'll tell you, Pete, it was kind of interesting when I first got to Atrium Health. They had hired a new VP of design and construction. He came from Texas, and he and I met very soon after I got here. And he was telling me that Atrium was way too risk adverse. And I told him I didn't really understand that because we are healthcare. And coming from Texas Children's, which is in the Texas Medical Center in Houston, all facilities there are very risk adverse. I mean, we had N+3 on air handling
Wow.
units that were
Wow.
100% HEPA filtered just for a women's center. We're right next to MD Anderson, definitely very risk adverse, and other facilities there. So I didn't understand that. And so tie that back to civil engineering. If you're going to design a bridge, you're going to want to do it right. You don't want it to fall, right? You don't want to cause.
Right.
If you're going to design a structure, a building or whatnot, you've got to be right. And so you've got to be risk adverse. So I think the analytical thought process and the fact that you really want to be right about what you're doing and avoid
Yeah.
and minimize risk is very helpful in the healthcare facilities world.
So kind of like more of a mindset and a way of thinking that can transition over.
Yeah, absolutely. I do find it interesting that some systems do want professional engineers on their staff. We do have
Yeah.
multiple PEs here at Atrium, and I do think that that's very helpful when you're reviewing designs and all. But I mean, we're not designing things. I mean, we're not stamping things. We're
Right.
So I don't know if you really need the PE behind your name. But the engineering degree definitely gives you the mindset and the thought process.
I agree with you on the PE thing. Obviously I'm in the business development world now, but when I was in the recruiting world, we'd have clients who would ask for the PE, and that was kind of like, what do you? I understand the value of it, understand the education thing, understand the work that goes into
Sure.
it, but why do you need it? And because they're not stamping drawings, right? And
Right.
it's interesting, I think, and especially as we face depleting staffs, sometimes putting up those barriers, you should have a good reason for the why, and maybe there is one, but the reason can't be, well, because we've always done it that way, because it doesn't.
That's right.
That just doesn't work anymore, you know. All right, so let's transition, Dennis, from the PE and the requirement or non-requirement for PE into the ASHE specific questions. You're running for president. Why?
Yeah, Pete, it's really for me all about timing. I'm currently serving my second 2-year term on the ASHE Advisory Board, and there was a transition as Lizzie Ortolano took over as executive director of ASHE just over 2 years ago. And she's running 2 professional membership groups for the American Hospital Association. She's running the ASHE program and the Association for Healthcare Environment, which is EVS. And right now, the ASHE board is focused on putting together a 3-year strategic plan with Lizzie and other new ASHE staff members. And I want to keep the momentum going by expanding on my current relationship with Skanda, who's the current ASHE president, and Mike Hatton, who's the ASHE president-elect. Mike and I work together in Texas as part of the Texas Association for Healthcare Facility Management, TAFM. And we support Skanda, and we're going to help him with defining the strategic plan. Then Mike will work with the ASHE staff to develop the plan. And then I would come behind them to help ensure that it's implemented, executed, and meets the needs of our membership.
You know, I've never thought of it that way before. You know, one of the questions that, you know, when I had Skanda on back in January when he started, and he's, I mean, as you know, he's just fantastic to have on, full of energy and ideas. But you know, one of the questions to him, and what I've traditionally asked is, you know, how do you have a year, right? And granted, you're president-elect and you're past president, but you have a year really to run the organization. I guess I've never thought of the continuity from one administration to another administration to another administration. So that 1 year gets multiplied by 3 or potentially 4.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, these strategic plans are very aggressive, and they cover a lot of ground. I mean, you think about our industry as a whole, there's a lot of different things we do and are responsible for. And honestly, the reason why so many of us love what we do is because it's something different every day. It truly is. And so, you know, when we were sitting in the board meetings, and this transition happened, and honestly, it did cause us to pause because you've got a new director coming on. We were given a little bit of a different direction as to what a ASHE advisory board was. So we had to kind of pause and cogitate about that. But I'm looking over at Mike Hatton, and I'm like, Mike, you know, you were the chair lead for optimizing facilities management, and we really haven't seen a lot from that committee, right? And not to put them on the spot, but just to really discuss, you know, what happens, you know, in those committee meetings. Why does it take so long? And you know, they got hung up on just defining what optimization looked like from facility management, right? But we're really wanting to see some sort of tools that are implemented in the field that folks can use and execute. And again, Mike and I and Skanda are on point on that. But what you're saying is, you know, you can't do that in 1 year. So you've got to have momentum. You've got to get it started now. You've got to get people behind you and excited about it. That's going to carry it on. And so, you know, everything we do is really about relationships. The value, we started by talking about the Innovation Conference. The value is networking. And so these are folks that we've known for many years. We've been talking about ASHE behind the scenes, and now we're on the board, and now we have the opportunity to get something done. And so when you're in a group like that and you're synced as far as vision and relationships, then it definitely means a lot more to you. And again, the timing is right because I really enjoy working with these guys, and I really want to execute what they get started.
I want to ask you about your platform, as running for president, but you just hit on the relationship thing, which I agree with you. It's so critically important, especially these days when it's so easy to be distracted and distanced and people don't come and work in the office. That, I mean, we don't have to go over everything, but I would imagine, and you don't have to divulge anything, but Advocate Aurora is out in Wisconsin, Illinois. You're down in North Carolina. You guys are coming. How do you try to form relationships? And you don't have to be best friends, but relationships help. Like when there's a distance like that, and you could go to Wake because it's kind of close to you. Milwaukee, you might not want to go in February. How do you develop those relationships when you're coming together as an organization and you're coming from different backgrounds?
Yeah, well, a couple thoughts on that. One is, let's plug ASHE, right? So the Advocate Aurora folks did go to the Innovation Conference. I was there along with Michael Roberts and some other members of Atrium. So we get an opportunity to spend time with each other there. The ASHE Leadership Institute, which is typically in October, November. Last year, there were members from Advocate Aurora there that I got to spend time with, and you and I both know that that's when the relationship bonds are really formed. Is honestly when you can break bread with people, you can sit down and have a drink with somebody, and you can just have an open discussion without it being in the work environment. So it really does help in the state chapter meetings, and I'm hoping we'll do more regional type meetings. That's another thing that I would love to see while I'm involved with the ASHE board. And then, navigating the whole, Teams or Zoom, etc., trying to at least get face to face, even if it's just on a computer screen, is helpful. And then what I keep telling my boss is, Charlotte is a hub, so is Chicago, and so there are 7 to 9 direct flights to Chicago every day, and round trip tickets are less than $200. So the price of relationships, I think it's very much worth it.
Yeah, especially when you're coming together as an organization. So tell us, Dennis, what is your platform?
So my platform is to support the ASHE membership. A main focus of that is education and certification. ASHE has introduced the MEC certification for our frontline workers, and we have recently reviewed our core competencies across the broad spectrum of the work that we perform in support of the healthcare physical environment. Next steps are to implement community-based training programs that are accessible to all, and educate our C-suite on the various certifications provided through the American Hospital Association and ASHE, as our members are recognized as subject matter experts in our field. We then want to expand support to planning, design, and construction, bridging the gap between facility operations and PDC, and focus on educating the C-suite and hospital administration on facilities, educating our facilities teams on the expectations of the C-suite. And then as we look for different ways of providing education, we need to ensure that we meet the needs of our associate members. These are our business partners, because we depend on them to help us with the execution of our educational programs. Education and innovation are the foundations for my platform. I personally love teaching and sharing knowledge and invoking conversation. And I provide multiple presentations every year, either at ASHE or state conferences. And I'm also currently teaching an online facility management master's class at the University of Texas, San Antonio, called Quality, Productivity, and Technology in Facility Management.
You don't have enough going on, so you want to teach?
That's always been a passion of mine, and that's why I do many presentations. And it was interesting. I saw it come up on LinkedIn. Dave Riker is a retired Air Force civil engineering officer who was running facilities at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and he helped create the master's program. And he had sent a message out on LinkedIn. And I reached out to him immediately. I said, Dave, what can I do to help? Do you have a place for me? Where do I fit? Because I would love to participate in that. And I enjoy it. Our final project, Pete, for my class is an RFP for a CMMS system.
That's great. What do the students think of the RFP for the CMMS system?
They see it as overwhelming at first, and I
Yeah.
break it down for them. And quite honestly, Pete, I hope they watch this podcast because I give them all the requirements in my lectures. So honestly, all they have to do is regurgitate what I've already given them, and they'll get a great grade.
So there it is. They better listen and watch that platform. And there's two I want to focus on, only because they piqued my interest. Not that they're any more valuable than the other, but your PDC and expanding community-based training. The expanding community-based training, can we start there? What do you envision for it? So in my mind, I'm thinking the community at large. Is that what you're thinking? What are the specifics of that?
Well, we've all tried different things to get more people in the pipeline and get them educated. And so these are not new, but I think with ASHE, there should be a focus to
Right.
help develop an implementation plan, right? And so how do you do that? So when you're dealing with like a community college, it's not as simple as just knocking on the door saying, hey, I see you teach HVAC. How about sending some folks my way, right? What skill set are you really looking for that may be specific to healthcare, or is it going to be specific to healthcare? And then how would they incorporate that into their curriculum? And unfortunately, it takes a while for educational institutions to do that. So how do you incorporate it into your curriculum? And then how can we take that to other state chapters and say, hey, here's how you navigate this. This is what we've done elsewhere. So ASHE is working with the Louisiana chapter, who's teamed with a community college out of Hammond, Louisiana, which is actually where my parents live, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then you've also got Mike Canales up in Owensboro Community College in Kentucky that's been teaching healthcare facilities management in a community college. So we need to take programs like that and show people how you can do that at your level, and then give them the resources. So ASHE can help get it going, standardized, and then get the state chapters to help support it. Because again, honestly, Pete, if it's just me or somebody else in a facility approaching a community college, it's just too much for us to really push. And you're probably not going to get the voice or the ear that you need to get it done.
Yes, I know. Mike's been on a couple of times. Actually, I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. I am sure he will be happy that you mentioned him in this particular episode. And I would agree with you. You do hear about many chapters and organizations doing, their part to extend out to the community, but you're looking at it more as, like, what can we do to assist, kind of centralize and make it multiple as opposed to one-offs, give people a mechanism to begin, kind of formalize it. You can do this, that, and that.
Yeah, and what's the value from the community college perspective, right? So if we do a case study in Louisiana, and they show that everyone that participates in the program gets a job immediately, then that could be a bonus. It could be an advertisement for them. Say, hey, if you take this healthcare track, we're already linked with multiple hospitals in the area. We'll get you an internship, and I'm sure it'll be followed by a job offer, right? So being able to show that, being able to track that, being able to pull the data together over multiple states and multiple organizations would be very beneficial.
Yep, no, agree. So, and PDC, tell us a bit about that particular goal.
We could do a whole nother podcast on that. That's fascinating to me, because when I started my career, all I was doing was design and construction. I really didn't spend a lot of time in facilities management when I was at Eglin Air Force Base in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And I enjoyed it. It's very exciting. Design and construction is very exciting. And you get to work with a lot of executives and directors and high-level people. And I mean, I had to go for one of my projects, I had to go all the way to the Secretary of the Air Force for approval. And I put together all that documentation. So very exciting, very, very fun. But at the end of the day, your maintenance staff and your operations staff has to maintain it. And I just don't feel like we're all aligned in what that looks like. Our key performance indicators on our projects are typically, maintain scope, schedule, and budget. And then when they're educated and taught about risk, and this comes from professional project management training to get certifications, they're taught that the risk to the projects are risk to schedule, budget, and scope. And so that's what they are taught to manage. That's what they are graded on. And unfortunately, when facility operations comes to the table, we're typically immediately a threat, because we're probably bringing something to the table that's a threat to the budget, the schedule, or the scope. And how do we get in front of that has always been a challenge. Budgets are set at the very highest levels. The people in project management are given a budget and told you must stay within this. And we come up and say, well, we can't do it that way. It needs to be done this way. And they're like, well, that costs more money. We can't do it. But we can also look at what kind of tools to help us with decisions. How do we calculate risk? How do we measure risk? How do we implement good risk mitigation? And then how do we educate folks that, again, are in the C-suite on what our involvement should be? I looked at some of the projects here in Charlotte, and when I look at the construction budget, and I feel like I'm very conservative, I'm going to tell you, Pete, that 80% of that construction budget is being spent on something that I, or POM, for plant operations and maintenance, are responsible to maintain. And we do not have 80% representation at the table.
If you know what, Dennis, you are correct. We could dive right into that, and I would love to. Yeah, I'm reading a book about we don't have a seat at the table. It reminded me of representation. I'm reading a book about Lafayette, Marquis Lafayette from France, and we're in the American Revolution part when he's over here, and that just triggered. Not that you're going to form a revolution, but
I want to be in the room where taxation.
It happened. Exactly. Don't go revolutionary, but that was the visual it evoked in my mind. Maybe it says more about me. So, Dennis, what do you see as some challenges and opportunities in healthcare facilities management? When I say challenges and opportunities, if you can look at it both through your lens of corporate facilities management at Atrium, but also as in your mind, hopefully president-elect coming up. What do you see as challenges and opportunities out there?
Yeah, Pete, I think the challenges are shared across the board, and that's another reason why we enjoy going to ASHE conferences and state chapter conferences. Misery loves company, as they say. The challenges are many, but the ones that I would love to see us focus on are, the retirement of teammates with institutional knowledge. And I see that here, Pete. I've been doing emergency operational preparedness. The first thing that's a little aggravating is that every site is very unique and very different. So it kind of goes back to our relationship with PDC and design standards. Some sites have quick connects for portable equipment, some don't. Some have chillers on emergency power, some don't. On and on and on. But you'll find that there's only like one person at the site that knows how to respond to emergency operation. He'll be the one guy that says, oh yeah, 10 years ago, I was here when such and such happened, and this is what we did. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge, and these guys are retiring, and we've got to figure out how to get that knowledge and put it in an automated system of some form. And the fact that there's no skilled trades in the pipeline, we talked about that with the community colleges, et cetera. But if you're not getting skilled labor and you're losing the skilled labor with the institutional knowledge, then that's a huge, huge challenge. And we talked a little bit about the inherent need to do less with less, and that really coincides with the need to exploit technology to include AI. So, when I'm talking about emergency operational preparedness, these are plans that you might review hopefully on an annual basis, but maybe not even that often. And in some some situations it becomes more of a checklist that, yes, I did it, I talked about it, move on. But what if we could put together really good plans that are executable, and then tie those to an AI agent? And then in a situation, you just say, hey, we'll call our AI agent Bob. Hey, Bob, I just lost electricity to my main hospital. What do I do? And Bob would spit out your plan to include drawings and maybe even make some phone calls for you to get some equipment rolling, right? So we need to look at that. Again, that kind of coincides with do less with less. We've got to come alongside our state chapters to address these concerns. We're going to need support at the local level. We talked about that with the community colleges. And we really need to focus on the C-suite. We've talked about this for many years. We are part of the American Hospital Association. There are executives that are members of that. We've got to get in front of them to educate them on our challenges, and then also bring information back to our folks on what the expectations are from the C-suite, so that we both have a very good understanding. We've talked about getting in the boardroom. We used to have topics of moving from the boiler room to the boardroom. We've focused on that from tool perspectives, but we really need to dive a little deeper into that.
So the old, and my old business partner, Jack Goslin, did a presentation in Washington years ago, 13, 14, 15 years ago, and many people up from the boiler room to the C-suite. In some ways now, and you tell me, it's okay, we're out of the boiler room, now we're knocking on the C-suite door, or we're in the C-suite. How do we communicate? How do we win them over? Have we advanced to that point, or are we still in the boardroom? Boiler room.
Boiler room. And that's something else that is a challenge for an organization like ASHE, because quite honestly, Pete, we're all over the place. There is no one size fits all, or else we would have solved this a long time ago. So you've got some facility management folks that grow up from the trades, that move up, and that's definitely part of a great succession planning. You've got folks like myself that come in as engineers. You do have PEs out there, so you've got a broad base of different perspectives and differing backgrounds, but we also have differing people that we work for. And so one of the challenges that I've seen in my career is the fact that some of our facility managers work directly for hospital administration. And so if hospital administration doesn't really have a background in facilities maintenance, then their focus is strictly on, most likely, the look and feel of the facility. And I see it all the time. I need you to paint this lobby. I need you to restripe the parking lot. I'm trying to enhance the morale, put up a basketball goal for me in the parking lot, or a picnic bench so people can eat outside. And then they get kudos for that. They get recognized for that. Hey, look at our facility management department and how wonderful they are, and how much they contribute to the morale here, and how beautiful our place is. But yet you look behind the scenes and things are falling apart because there's focus on that. There's no corporate person like Dennis Ford looking over your shoulder saying, hey, why aren't you paying attention to this? Or looking at your BAS and saying, hey, you've got some humidity issues here, and you're going to be growing mold pretty quick if you don't do something about it. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place, and so our tools need to reflect that. If you're new to it, this is what you do. If you're more advanced, this is what you need to be looking at. But I do think part of this, though, is educating the C-suite. So we've got to get at their conferences and give presentations and show them you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that's behind the scenes, and you're actually required to have a maintenance program approved by CMS, either by following manufacturer suggested maintenance or having an approved alternative maintenance plan. And it's timely, it's costly, but in the long run, it's going to save you, right? So what's the life cycle cost analysis? How do we look at that? And from your perspective, being a part of the C-suite, I think these are the things you should be focused on.
Yep. So Dennis, some closing comments. My guest is Dennis Ford. Dennis is Corporate Facilities Management, Atrium Health. Dennis is down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Dennis is also running to be the 2025 ASHE President. I can't remember if I gave the dates. That's ongoing now from July 21st to August 21st. Is that one?
August 21st. You can vote up until August 21st.
So any closing comments, Dennis? The floor is yours. Anything we didn't get to or anything you'd like to leave with our listeners relative to your candidacy?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Pete. I think we've covered a lot of ground. And it's just, again, it's a professional organization that is going through change. We saw the first big one with the Innovation Conference. We're trying to reinvent or revigorate the ASHE program or organization. And we definitely, and again, when I'm talking with people like Mike Hatton, we want to get down to the grassroots level and support the frontline workers. And we've got to figure out how best to do that. You know, there's not enough funding for everybody to go to conferences. Even MD Anderson, who's a huge facility in Houston, they cut their funding and their guys didn't go to the Innovation Conference. And
Wow.
I see them there every year. So
yeah,
you know,
that's
when
telling.
the big players aren't being able to support the people that they have supported every year, it's just showing us a trend. Our state organizations, most of them are very well situated from a funding perspective, from a support perspective. I think we're going to have to implement more programs through our states. So we've got to come alongside our state affiliated chapters with ASHE to get this implemented. And to the point you and I made earlier, it's about relationships, and relationships really are best suited face to face. So we've got to get people engaged, get them out of their facility, get them in front of other people that are doing the same thing down the road in the same state, and start sharing that information and knowledge with each other.
Yeah, you know, that institutional knowledge that you talked about, from when I was doing the recruiting world, I saw from the perspective of you'd ask a question before you started the recruitment, maybe their director left, was fired, nobody would know the answer. And now I see it in, you know, the VP of business development world when we go in and work with clients in a different way than recruiting, where we're trying to build program with them. And that institutional knowledge, that's kind of scary, because those folks are leaving and they're not coming back. And if you don't capture it, it's gone. It's gone. And so, yeah, so many big themes. Like you said, it's what keeps your job interesting. Lots of challenges.
Yeah, for sure. And along those same lines, you know, the institutional knowledge and the relationships, when you're surveyed by an accrediting organization with deemed authority, it's all, in my opinion, about the rapport you build with that surveyor, because that surveyor is going to be looking at you to see how knowledgeable you are. Does this person understand the requirements, the codes, etc.? And you've got to put their mind at ease, because if you don't, they will see everything and they will cite everything, and you'll have to explain that to your C-suite as to why that happened, right?
Like a dog digging for a bone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete.
I'm Peter Martin, Vice President of Business Development for Cref. As always, thank you for watching this episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Have a great day.